it's like mashing Kick-Ass with the dark TV drama Mr. Robot, like Invincible or Kick-Ass, and that it's the story about this young man named Kaz whose best friend is a superhero, and he suddenly withdraws from everyone, and Kaz sees something's wrong, and after exhausting every normal option of trying to help his friend by talking to him and encouraging him to seek therapy, when all else fails, he decides that if he's just going to hide in his room and hide from his problems, that Kaz will adopt a superhero persona, a supervillain persona, Detonator, and force him to confront his mental illness. Again, thanks for having me on, dude.
All right. Thank you for coming on the Comics Cube, James. Did I call you James or Jim?
James is fine.
Thank you for coming on the Comics Cube, James. Welcome to the Comics Cube, everyone. I'm with James Michael Parrish. We're talking about his new comic, Detonator. Let me ask you something. Why do you love comics? What was it that made you start loving it, and what was it that made you start making it?
The first question is really tough for me to answer, and it seems like such a simple thing, but when you're a kid, you don't really think about why you love the things you love. Like when I was like 5 years old and given mac and cheese, it blew my mind. And right around that same age, I was reading like Godzilla mangas. I was a big Godzilla fan, and I would pick up the mangas for Godzilla, and they had like these Americanized Pokemon comics, and some early Spider-Man. So I would just ever since I was a little kid, I couldn't stop reading them.
I take it you had Godzilla over Kong.
Yeah, I will say that movie was just a ton of fun. Everyone won with that one.
I saw some people complaining that it had no plot, and I'm like, what did you want? What did you want?
Yeah, I'm not looking for Shakespeare when I see a giant lizard and a monkey beat each other up. I got what I wanted. I will say I kind of stepped away from comics for a while, and I just kept watching anime and the occasional superhero film. And when the Raimi Spider-Man movies are coming out, there's a movie theater right next to a comic book store in my neighborhood in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. It's called Galaxy Comics, and the comic store. And I was just browsing around, and it was right when Ultimate Spider-Man came out, and there wasn't a more perfect entry point for someone like 11 or 12. And since then, I've just been hooked again.
You're not the first person I've heard say that. I've heard people say the Raimi Spider-Man made them walk into a comic store. Ultimate Spider-Man was in there. It makes you wonder why they don't do it more often. Actually,
yeah, or do it as well.
Yeah. Or do it as well, yeah. And it was something that to bring new readers back. Why did you start making comics though?
Well, I've always loved writing or telling stories, and it was kind of I feel like most people have I don't know, a more positive reason to start writing comics, but I was reading a ton and nerding out with my friends and getting really pissed at a bunch of stories, and I always thought about what I would do instead. And that led to me and a few of my friends just constantly pitching each other ideas. When we'd go out on the weekend, we'd hang out at bars or at each other's houses, and we'd share these pitches. And it was past the like 5 minutes of wouldn't it be cool if like I did a story where Superman was evil or something like that. And we would talk for hours to each other. And I really enjoyed it. But at the same time, I started to kind of get frustrated with myself for constantly sharing these stories, but not really acting on them. So one day I just, I was really frustrated with how many pitches we were sharing with each other, and I just started writing them down.
Is Detonator your first?
Detonator is my first comic. And actually, another something that helped me significantly, that encouraged me, was there are two things. Scott Snyder would constantly do reviews on comic book resources, and
Yeah, I
a lot,
remember that.
yeah, and a lot of his reviews, I mean, a lot of his interviews were very educational. Like, in addition to telling you about whatever story he was working on, be it American Vampire or his Detective Comics run, he would tell you why he wrote the story the way he did, who he pitched it to, and his challenges with it. And those, though I've never had a formal education in writing, those helped me kind find some structure for writing.
So would you say Scott Snyder is one of your biggest influences?
Absolutely.
Did, what is it about Scott's, aside from all of that, what is it about Scott Snyder's writing that you draw from?
So I'd say, even though I feel that I write very different stories and I write very differently than him. Obviously, he's a freaking rock star, but he in all of his stories, he has a very clear theme that he's exploring,
Mm-hmm.
and he usually also deals with very primal fears or primal passions that characters have. And he I feel like even if you took Batman out of his Detective Comic story, or the vampires out of American Vampire, you could still tell the bare bone story about a young actress being exploited by greedy producers in American Vampire, or a hardworking detective's past coming to haunt him, like it did with James Gordon Jr. in the Batman run. And his stories really helped me understand how to build the skeleton of a story more than anything else.
And so using all of the, using the structure of a story as an
Yeah.
allegory for something real
Yeah.
would be it. And Detonator is about PTSD and isolation.
Yeah.
Where'd that come from?
Um, Let me think. Well, for a while, I've worked in emergency medicine,
Mm,
and I've dealt with a lot of patients that endure mental illness, and I myself have dealt with extreme stress that comes with the job. Um, Regardless of what kind of training you get for emergency medicine, um, nothing can really prepare you for the uh, interpersonal relations that you have. Like, and I've seen so many people on both sides, whether they're a patient or an EMS professional, or just anyone that works in a similar field. Like, I work with law enforcement on occasion, or social workers, and you see a lot of people that don't have proper treatment um, for the aftermath of incredibly stressful situations. And I feel like there's really no better place to explore people that are struggling with their trauma,
yeah.
uh, more than a superhero story, because there are so many superhero stories where people who are teenagers, they just slap on a costume and they go out and fight crime, and they wake up and go to school the next day, and their biggest problem is that they're late for school. It's not that they're unable to process that they physically uh, just destroyed somebody, or that they were afraid for their own lives, or that they caused irrevocable damage to their surroundings. And I wanted to write a story where the characters, the superhero in question, the superhero in Detonator, uh, actually deals with these unforeseen consequences of taking on a heroic mantle without any training.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's interesting because you just said all of that, and you mentioned earlier that Ultimate Spider-Man got you back into comics. Kind of
Yeah.
feels to me like even back then you could see kind of you could kind of see an opportunity, uh, given the superhero genre. Like you could see there was a gap in it.
Oh, for sure. And that's not to say that I feel like there are plenty of people that rag on the superhero genre. I freaking love superhero stories.
Yeah.
I'm still reading a bunch today. I I'm loving Chip Zdarsky's Daredevil.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, Al
it's
Ewing's
really
Mortal
good.
Hulk. There are so many good ones. Um, I think the reason that I wanted to explore mental illness and isolation and miscommunication in a superhero story is that because the genre is so malleable and because all the characters can be so symbolic that it's very easy to take these uh, mundane real world problems and put them in a package that people might find more compelling. I think that PTSD, depression, and just simple things like miscommunicating with your loved ones. These are all very serious and important issues, but sometimes reading about them can be hard for people. And I wanted to do it in a way that's a little more digestible. And it feels weird saying it, but a little fun.
It is fun. It is fun. But before we get to why it's fun,
Yeah,
if you were to do an elevator pitch, you know, you'd give a little paragraph, whatever. Maybe it's what's going on at the start of your Kickstarter.
yeah.
How would you describe Detonator?
So if I was to describe Detonator, if I had to compare it to a few movies or anything, I would say that it's like mashing um, Kick-Ass with the dark TV drama Mr. Robot, like Invincible or Kick-Ass, and that it's the story about this young man named Kaz whose best friend is a superhero, and he's he suddenly withdraws from everyone, and Kaz sees something's wrong, and after exhausting every normal option of trying to help his friend by talking to him and encouraging him to seek therapy, when all else fails, he decides that if he's just going to hide in his room and hide from his problems, that Kaz will adopt a superhero persona, a supervillain persona, Detonator, and force him to confront his mental illness.
Why? What was the impetus for making the protagonist the best friend of the superhero?
I constantly juggled between which perspective I wanted to do, and I think it's because while both characters have very interesting journeys, I think that I think that Kaz is is more relatable to more people, and that
Mm-hmm.
I think fortunately uh, more people have not experienced PTSD and depression than those who have. And I think that a lot of us have been the friend who doesn't know how to help someone who's suffering.
Yeah,
And I want to explore the story from that perspective of someone who's just desperately trying to help their friend but doesn't know what to do.
yeah,
Because
that.
obviously,
Yeah,
like
go ahead.
blowing up your friend's house is not going to make their mental state any better. If you guys read Detonator, just want you all to know I don't condone exploding your friends' houses. Don't do that.
That's just part of the superhero genre.
Yeah, yeah,
No, that's a good move though, because uh I could definitely relate more to the friend
yeah,
than to the guy suffering from PTSD or mental illness
yeah,
or whatever. And I feel like the world, the people who are the friends, could use some sort of guide. You know what I mean?
for
Like
sure.
it hasn't been. I don't know. It just hasn't been that cut and dry as to what the friends should do throughout history.
Yeah,
Um, so, and then tell me about the one thing that jumps out at me when looking at this book is the
yeah.
production quality. If this is your first comic, the production quality in this comic is kind of insane. Um,
Thank you, man.
Usually with somebody's first comic, I can, you know, there's something that sticks out. Like the lettering is, it's usually the lettering is bad.
Hmm.
The lettering is bad, or the colors are sometimes it's black and white out of necessity because they can't afford a colorist,
Of course.
etc. But how'd you stumble upon Carlos Enzamudio? And
Oh, well, I'm very lucky. I am a huge D&D nerd, and while I was writing my first script for Detonator, I was talking to my good friend Mary, who went to art school, and when she saw that I was interested in making Detonator, and she saw that I wasn't just BSing and that I was going to make this happen, she put me in touch with Ariel Zamudio, who does I believe she does the pencils and inks for Cullen Bunn's Shadow Roads and a few of his other projects. Really talented, really sweet. I messaged her and she was busy, but her husband Carlos is just as talented, and he was interested in the project, and we've been working on it ever since.
that's pretty awesome, man.
Yeah.
How tightly do you write a script for Carlos?
So I usually what I like to do is I'll write the script. I'd say on a scale of like Stanley, which is I guess Marvel method, to early Scott Snyder, where he said he was very neurotic and broke things down. I'm like 80%, 80 or 90% Scott Snyder. But what I'll do is I always just give Carlos the caveat, like, uh, if you think that something else would work better for this page, um, draw it out and let's talk about it. And I have to say, every single issue we have had a moment where he's made a decision that I think has benefited the comic immensely, whether it's just paneling or just slightly changing a character design or changing the flow of an action sequence. And I think that's you have to let your artists breathe and do their own thing, or if you want their best work.
How much input did you guys each have on character design?
Um, I gave Carlos quite a bit of freedom. I gave him like a vague outline for Kaz and a vague and I gave him an idea for Detonator, and he gave me three um he sent me back three different designs for Detonator, and then we kept hammering away at them until we got the one that graces the comic. But generally, I just tell him, here's what I'm thinking, but if you can think of something more badass, go for it.
And tell me about, very interesting here to me is the color palette.
Yeah.
It's not the kind of color palette that you would expect from most comics, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did you guys come up with this particular color palette? What are you going for here?
Oh man, so I will say that's almost all Carlos, man. He is he's a colorist,
Yeah.
obviously, and he colors the first issue before we switched to Douglas De La Hoz, who's also incredible. But I really wanted I wanted it to be really vibrant. I wanted it to if you're walking by it in a comic store, I want your eyes to stay glued even if you're walking away. And I wanted to contrast the the dark subject matter with a kind of bright and poppy um, color palette.
Yeah. So if that was all Carlos, how did you react when you saw it for the first time?
Oh, I was pleased as punch, man. Um, I've seen you mentioned that the production value is great, and I gotta say, I really want to make comics. If I'm lucky enough, and people like Detonator and this other comic series I'm working on, I'm really hoping that I could make this a second career. And I love people's passion for comics, and I go on all the indie Facebook groups and subreddits, and I think that some people will have great stories, and sometimes I feel like they'll rush things a little bit, and I wanted to avoid that. If there is any reason for this to fail, I did not want it to be the art or the lettering.
The lettering is the kind of thing where you only really notice it if it's bad,
Yeah.
So um, we'll get to the other comic series you're working on later. But
Sure.
your Kickstarter's coming out in a couple of weeks. By the time we launch this, it'll be coming out.
Yeah.
You're tentatively looking at July 16.
Oh yeah.
How final is that date?
I'd say it's pretty final. I just like I was neurotic about planning for Detonator. I'm just as neurotic with the Kickstarter because I have no connections in comics. I'm pretty much a nobody, and you only get to launch your Kickstarter for the first time once. I mean,
Yeah.
you can always relaunch it, but I want to make a really good first impression, and I I initially wanted to launch it back in May, so it's already severely delayed. Um, and I've been trying to get a lot of good variant covers in to incentivize people to check things out. So and I've been working on the graphic design for the page itself. But I got some really freaking cool variant covers from some freaking awesome artists, and I think it was definitely worth delaying it.
Tell me about those.
Yeah, sure,
Yeah.
okay. So there's one guy that I was not kidding when I said I'm a D&D nerd, and I've commissioned character portraits from people.
Mm-hmm.
And I commissioned this guy Paul Reinwand for one, and he's done comic art for the Bungie's Destiny, like for their comic series. And he also did the collectible trading cards in The Last of Us 2.
Oh,
And yeah, he did a really neat cover. Um, uh, Another artist that I worked with, his name is Dolly, incredible artist from the UK. He does a lot of poster work for Pixar, Sony, and Marvel. Like if you go to watch The Mandalorian, you're going to see his art on the Mandalorian page whenever you pull something up. And I really love comic covers, but I wanted something more like a movie poster or an album cover. I got one from him, and he was great to work with. Really great guy. I Obviously, working in a new field, you're gonna have a lot of doubts. I shared in my comics, and he said he really enjoyed them, and like hearing that from professional really just made my day. I had to put on a big face and not pretend to not be emotional when he said that.
you had to be like,
Like, yeah, I know it's good. Duh, like, um,
thank you,
yeah,
thank you very much.
yeah. Excuse me. um, the colorist that I'm working with now, that Carlos actually, he discovered him, and recommended him to me. Douglas De La Hose. He's done the background art for Rick and Morty season 4, and he did like an almost noir cover. Um, And then a friend of mine that was initially going to do the colors, but it just didn't work out, Alan Cortez. It's really funny. Coincidentally, I had him do a kaiju cover, and I was initially going to have a King Kong versus Godzilla variant, where like Detonator is like one and Matt's Beacon is the other. But I instead had Detonator look like an Eva unit from Evangelion, and
Mm.
Matt Beacon look like a Godzilla. So I had a little fun with that. And those are the variant covers I got done. I messaged like 50 artists.
That's the way to do it.
Yep.
How many? So you sent me 3 issues. Will
Yep.
the Kickstarter cover all 3 of them?
The Kickstarter will cover all 3. I have them all printed, seated right next to me. Uh, really happy with how they came out. I did like a little trial run. There's the first issue. Here's the second. Oh, that's really glossy.
Nice.
Yeah, and I got the third, and we have like a neat little like a preview of the issue blurb on the back.
You've got spot gloss too on the covers.
Yeah, I want them to look really good. Um, if people are going to put good money into it, I want them to get something that's a little durable and looks pretty nice.
What are your other tiers depending on what people buy?
Okay, so you can get the PDF for 10,000. No, just $15. For the first 3 issues in a PDF. And then for the physical copy, I'll ship it anywhere in the world, for $20. For 40, you get one variant. And then there is the all 5 variant tier, where you get every single variant plus all 3 issues of the original covers.
Mhm.
And I believe that one, I think it's 100. Yeah, it's 100. And then we also have library editions where you can just get like 10 of the variants or 10 copies of all 3 issues if you're a store. But the last spicy one is getting drawn into a future issue. There are going to be 7 issues of Detonator, and you can draw yourself probably getting brutally killed
Blown
in
up.
yeah, most likely. In issues 4 through 7, and that will be 250, I believe. And those are all our tiers.
You're
Sweet
launching
and simple.
all 3 all at once, so the next 4 will be what? Like, how would you launch those in the future?
Well, it all depends on the success of this Kickstarter. I actually have issues 4 and 5 as stretch goals for them. So we'll see how that goes. I'm either going to do a second Kickstarter that for the remaining issues, or if this Kickstarter is successful enough, I may just go crazy and go right to a trade Kickstarter.
All right. So speaking of stretch goals,
Yeah.
what are we looking at stretch goals wise?
All right. So the first stretch goal is an enamel pin of Detonator. Carlos was adamant that he wanted an enamel pin, so we're doing that. And then we have stickers planned and a trading card set. We're still figuring out who is going to do those. Carlos's wife Ariel may be doing those, but I don't want to confirm that because we haven't confirmed that just yet.
You don't
And
want
then
to put
from
her on the
there,
spot.
yeah, no, she's doing the trading cards and 20 issues for me. And the last ones are issues 4 and 5. Those are the last 2 stretch goals.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And tell me what else you're working on.
I am. It's a little. I'm playing it close to the vest right now. I'm working on a fantasy comic that all I'll really say about it is that I really love seinen mangas or seinen. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but things like Berserk, Vinland Saga, Vagabond, and
I
and
love Vagabond.
beautiful
It's
series.
so good.
Yeah, it's isn't it crazy how it can go from being so serene to just so brutal, and
Yeah.
it never feels out of place. It never feels contradictory. It's amazing.
Yeah, I feel really sad that it might never finish.
Yeah, at least it really is very frustrating. I'm happy they at least made that epilogue. I don't know if you've seen it, but there's a little epilogue
Really?
online. I'm not sure if I just saw it on Imgur, so I'm not sure if I should be mentioning it. But um, it was. I obviously still want a satisfying ending, but it was nice to see that.
Yeah.
But
I'll have to
but
look that
jumping
up.
back,
Yeah, go ahead.
but so I really love stories like that, and I'm really enjoying comics like Headlopper and wow. I am totally Ultra Mega. Almost forgot the name.
Okay.
And Ultra Mega. And the thing I like about them is that when you get a single issue, it's a big meaty issue where you get 40 to 60 pages of content, and it's like you're getting a full meal and you leave satisfied. And I'm working on a comic series that's going to release with each issue being between 40 to 60 pages, and it's going to be a fantasy series that's in the vein of I'd say it's like if Breath of the Wild and uh, Studio Ghibli's Princess Mononoke had a baby, and I'm really looking forward to sharing more with you about that later. But I'm gonna play that close to the vest.
Imagining now Princess Mononoke and the Breath of the Wild map, and that's a very different game now.
Yeah, I also I I'm not sure if people will know about this later, probably in a year from now, but it's also inspired kind of by Chainsaw Man. It's I wanted to have a fantasy story that has a very, instead of an epic and wide scope, I wanted to tell a very intimate story in a fantasy setting while keeping it epic.
That's the D&D fan in you. Because there's that joke there's that joke that makes its way around the internet a lot of the time. It's like, I would like to run a D&D campaign that's just me and nobody else. And then somebody goes, that's just called writing.
I've seen that. I've seen that. They're not wrong. They're not wrong. That's basically what I actually ran a D&D campaign that lasted about 3 years with a few of my best friends, and the world that I built for that is heavily inspired the world that my characters will inhabit in this future story. That I'd love to talk to you about at length later.
Let's do it. Let's do it at length later when you're ready to talk about it.
But I have a question for you, man.
Go ahead.
What did you think of Detonator? Just, be brutal.
I thought it was really good, and it was like, especially since you're here telling me now it was your first try, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, you gotta be kidding me.
Yeah, I'm really glad. That means a lot, man. I'm really flattered.
Yeah, you got to be kidding me, because I'm like, first timers don't, well, they don't have, usually they don't have this level of art,
Yeah.
right? And the fact that you got Carlos to do it
Mhm.
at this level,
Yeah.
kind of nuts. And then also, again, like I mentioned, the color palette, I'm like,
Yeah.
first timers would not do this. Like,
Yeah. He's
it's
good.
it's crazy. And then of course it ends, it ends issue 3 and ends on a cliffhanger, and I'm like, wait, where's the rest of it?
Awesome. Did you have like a favorite scene that you liked, or or a favorite character? Just because I'd like to just get some feedback. I don't really get to talk to many people about it.
Favorite character, it's probably Kaz. Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah, probably more relatable,
Hmm.
just in general. So, favorite scene.
Hmm.
I read the whole thing in a binge, so it's kind of
It's all blur.
difficult. Yeah, you know how it
Uh-huh.
is.
For sure.
Yeah, that's why I prefer Disney Plus shows to Netflix shows. You know what I mean?
I think it's a very smart business model on their part. You
Disney
get the
Plus.
water cooler talk.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you get the water cooler talk.
This
Yeah,
if they still existed.
even though I've almost completely switched to trades in the last few years, so
Yeah.
so that might be hypocritical on my part.
Dude, I totally hear you. I mean, if we had to stack every single episode of a show we watched in our room, I think we would just wait for the full season to be out too.
You want to know which episode was which, like
Yeah.
which episode contained which things, right?
Yeah.
But man, I thought the design for Detonator was kind of crazy.
Yeah.
It's like,
I
that's simple, and
yeah,
it works.
I gotta tell you, I never really mentioned it directly, but I really love Jack-o'-lantern's design for Marvel Comics. He's just like a C-list rando villain, and I really
Love
love him.
him. I
Yeah,
love him.
he's so fun. Rick Remender, the way he wrote him, it really just endeared me to him, and I'm really glad. I feel that I kind of modeled some of the Detonator persona after that crazy, sadistic Halloween bastard.
My favorite thing about Jack-o'-lantern is just like,
Mhm.
why do you exist when all of the goblins are here?
Yeah.
Right? But it's specifically so he's a C-list villain. Now I remember now what my favorite scene is. It's
Mhm.
the one where the two kids get the powers. And
Oh, awesome.
the little boy is like, how come I'm the pink one?
Yeah,
And then like, wait, what? Are you really gonna complain about that?
I'm
Like,
really glad.
no.
I almost didn't keep that scene. I really love it, but I feel like in a lot of modern stories, there's this push to always be a little more grim and serious, because if you're grim and serious, you're mature. And I'm really glad that I resisted the urge to add to get rid of that bit of levity and also vulnerability.
Comic relief is important, even when you're
I-
dealing with depression and PTSD and isolationism.
Absolutely. And for everyone watching, it's a scene. the superhero best friend Matt, he has very similar powers to Superman, like a lot of different indie comics these days, but he's also able to share his powers.
Yeah.
So where all these superhero figures, including Matt, are metaphorical beacons of hope. He literally is a beacon that gives people strength, and it's something I wanted to explore.
And I love the boys' reaction to it. It's like, why am I the pink one, right?
Yeah,
Because, and then he just dismisses that right off the bat. It's like, yeah,
yeah,
it's really not that important.
yeah, and you know, kids they get mad, and then most of the time they just bounce right back.
And the best thing about it is that the moment they fly, like uh, there's a cat there. First thing she does is pick up a cat.
Yep. Uh,
Yeah.
true heroism, saving cats out of trees. And I wanted to contrast it. I wanted to have scenes like that from Beacon's past to contrast with the the hero that you now see unable to leave his room, who's
Yeah.
barely even talking to the people that love him most.
That's all. It's a good comic, man. Like
Yeah.
I'm very happy for you. I wish you the best of luck on the 16th, moving onwards.
Thank you very much, dude. I gotta say, another person who helped get me into comics, Justin freaking Jordan. Justin Jordan. Um, I watched your interview with him, by the way, and it was great. The Urban Animal one.
Yeah.
Um,
You like how he didn't turn his cam on?
yeah, I like the little comic Justin. He's such a nice dude, and I remember when the Strange Town of Luther Strode first came out. I liked it on Facebook, and he friended me like instantly. And I messaged him one day on a whim years later, asking if he had any advice on how to make a comic, and he helped me. He helped give me advice for approaching artists and for pitching to publishers, and it really helped me. It really helped me a lot. It's really cool to have people like him and Scott be so inviting.
Justin is a, how do I say this? Justin is one of the most thoughtful people I know in the industry. Like he really, when I say that, I mean he really thinks about everything, like in
Yeah.
the business, the craft,
Hmm.
how to deal with people, how to pitch things. He thinks about everything.
Yeah, it really shows. He's he posts so many statuses on Facebook that pertain to the industry, and they're all really helpful. And I try to take what I can from him.
Thank you, James. This was
Mhm.
great. Really
Right
appreciate
back
it.
at you, man. Thanks for having me on, and dude, thanks for all the interviews you've done, especially the David Peterson one. I've been dying for news on the Weasel War, and you finally got some for me.
I am thanks for that. He's awesome. I
Yeah.
love him.
Um,
And
mhm.
I'm also looking forward to the Weasel War.
Awesome, man.
Yeah,
Hope we get to nerd out about it sometime.
I hope so. All right. Take care, Jim.
All right, take care.